One of the most challenging things about shooting film is that the process is shrouded in mystery. Your work is literally being withheld from you in a light, tight container up until the moment that you can look at it without destroying it. That lack of control over the process can be deeply felt, and while there's a good variety of film stocks available from Kodak, the cameras and lenses are aging out of existence. As options for repair continue to dwindle, the squeeze on cameras will only increase. It's a legitimate concern, and one that is only exceeded by the scarcity of processing labs. There are only hundreds of functional 8 and 16mm cameras left, a small percentage of which are available for sale or for rent. As small as that number is, though, there are even fewer labs that process and scan film. While a camera is important for shooting film, we believe that the relationship you have with your lab is even more important. And that's why we've been burning through 8 and 16mm film and sending it off to be processed and scanned at different labs, just to see how they compare. In this video, we'll talk about the 3 labs that we've been using, share our opinions on their strengths and their weaknesses, and give our recommendations on which ones we think are worth considering as you shoot and develop film. We'll focus on workflow differences first and then compare prices at the end. We will be showing samples of footage that we got scanned at each lab, but this video is not a proper scan quality comparison video. We're working towards that, but for now, any judgments you make on scan quality will be just that, qualitative. The 3 labs we'll be comparing are Pro8mm, which is in Burbank, California, Cine Lab in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and Spectra, which is in North Hollywood, California. Let's start with Pro8. Of the 3 labs, Pro8 might be the best well known. Their prices are competitive and they offer all-in packages which can include film, processing, and scanning. It's a business that caters to people who want to worry less about process and more about actually shooting. Something else that separates them from other labs and film vendors is that they repackage the film. The film is Kodak Vision, but the label says Pro8mm. So you won't know the manufacturer or package date from the factory, and this can be a bit troubling as you might be mixing different batches. So, if you're trying to produce content that is absolutely consistent from roll to roll, Pro8 might not be the best choice. But then, if you're trying to produce content that's absolutely consistent from roll to roll, 8mm might not be for you either. If you're shooting something to spice up your social media feed, or you want to bash through a roll to test that your camera works, it's not a big deal if the film stock is 1 month old or 10, and Pro8 would be worth considering. If not for the fact that the business is difficult to work with. Every in-store interaction I've had with their staff has been frustrating, and their online reviews seem to indicate that this is not an isolated incident. Interactions with staff were frequently terse, and delivery mistakes are more common than one would hope. The price is good, considering the fact that they're based in LA, but the quality of the work they do is reflective of the cost. And look, while hearsay is not admissible in a court of law, after a uniquely rough interaction with Pro8, I did call up some DPs I know who also shoot film, and they shared similar experiences. Again, not admissible in a court of law, but when patterns emerge in the reviews and every single conversation we had with other DPs, you start to evaluate reasonable risk and consider other options. So, what are those other options? Well, for one, there is Cine Lab. The first thing to know about Cine Lab is that they don't sell film. They only handle processing and scanning. We got a couple of rolls processed with them, and we were very content with the attention to detail and the communication from the staff. The prices are better at Cine Lab than at Pro8, especially when you consider the quality of work and the communication, but there was one major snag that makes them a tough choice. For us. We're based in Los Angeles, and we were spoiled rotten by the turnaround time at Pro8. They're a 15-minute drive from where we shoot, so it was absolute butter to swing out on a lunch break, drop off the film, and then swing out a few days later to pick up the hard drive. Cine Lab is based in Massachusetts, which means the vast majority of film shooters are going to be shipping their footage. Sure, you save money on development costs, but you're going to be spending money on shipping instead, unless you live in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which, statistically speaking, you don't. For us, though, it wasn't the cost of shipping that was the biggest concern, it was the time. When we moved from Pro8 to Cine Lab, we went from a 3-day turnaround to nearly a month of waiting and wondering how our film was looking. Film is by nature a slower, more considered process. We know this. But that jump from 3 days to 3 weeks was too deeply felt to be sustainable. If you're not in a rush, or if you live in New Bedford, Massachusetts, I would strongly consider Cine Lab for your film developing needs. Since we don't fit that criteria, we had to keep testing labs, and most recently have been getting our film processed at Spectra. Spectra is right around the corner from Circus Liquor, so whether you're a fan of booze or the film Clueless, you can consider Spectra a destination location. Because it's nearby, we do all of our transactions with Spectra in person and have been very pleased with how those interactions go. We're on a first-name basis, and the staff even knows the cameras we use and gives us insight into their idiosyncrasies. This feedback is incredibly helpful because the cost of trial and error is so high with film. If you make a mistake that ruins an entire reel, you want to know the straightest line possible to never make that mistake again. A lab that knows what you're shooting and the camera you're using can really help you find that straight line. Spectra is the most expensive per reel, but it's worth noting that their pricing gets better when you buy multiple packages at a time. Like Pro8, you can buy the film, processing, and scanning all at once, but unlike Pro8, you can buy any of those individually without being locked into a package. Since we're hand-delivering the film, we're saving heaps on shipping, both in time and money. This makes Spectra a fairly easy choice over Cine Lab, but that's only because we're working in Los Angeles. If you're not in LA or Massachusetts, your experience with Spectra and Cine Lab would largely feel the same, in which case Cine Lab might be the way to go as their costs are a bit lower than Spectra. Which brings us to prices. To avoid confusion, we're only going to compare the cost of shooting a single 50-foot roll of Super 8, getting it processed and then scanned at 2K resolution and delivered in ProRes. These calculations will not include shipping costs or storage media. This is just for the film, the processing, and the scan. This is also for one roll, so if you're planning to shoot in bulk, check with the lab and see what kinds of discounts you might qualify for. Labs can have wiggle room in pricing for student shoots, bulk purchases, and film or camera tests. It's not guaranteed, but if you don't ask, the answer is definitely no. Pro8 is the simplest to price because simple pricing on complete film packages is their bread and butter. They charge $110 for end-to-end services, excluding shipping. Cine Lab charges $50 per cart for processing, prep, and scanning, but don't forget that you need to buy the film first. Cartridges are listed on B&H for around $40, so you're still ahead of Pro8, but you have to remember to factor time and shipping into the cost of working with Cine Lab. Spectra is the most expensive option, with film carts, processing, and scanning coming in at about 130 bones. While Spectra is the most expensive, that's the one we're going with for now. If you've shot film for any amount of time, you understand the importance of the relationship that you develop with your lab. That relationship converts really quickly into actual money. For example, Pro8 costs less per reel than Spectra, but in our experience, Spectra takes the time to discuss what went wrong when the footage comes back different from how we expected it. And in doing so, they have saved us hundreds of dollars in protracted trial and error. The more nuanced your understanding of the shooting process becomes and the more ambitious your projects become, the more important it is to have a team that can support those ambitions properly. A simple mistake when shooting digital can be costly. That cost is exponential when shooting film, so the need for risk reduction is also exponential. That might have a bit of an ominous tone to it, but the intention isn't to scare you away from film. The intention is to make sure that your experience with film is as smooth as possible, because when everything comes together, you end up with footage unlike anything else you've ever shot. There is reward on the other side of that risk, and the lab that gets you there is worth what they charge, and so much more. Of course, these are our opinions on our experiences. If you've had experiences, positive or negative, with any of the labs covered in this video, please leave a comment below. Also, if there are labs you think we should cover in a future video, give them a shout out. It would be a great excuse to pick up a couple more rolls of film and burn them down. Now please, stop watching YouTube and go make some art.